Welcome back to the Jeff Crilley Show. We're having a whole hour on improving your life for 2018, and my next guest is Sandi Mitchell. She is the CEO of ApexLeadershipCoaching.com is her website. Welcome to the Jeff Crilley Show.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, thank you. So you are a big believer in emotional intelligence. What does that mean?
Yeah, for leaders, I think having emotional intelligence is so vital to your ability to really influence people, to get them to understand what your vision is, but not only from I need to make them productive piece, but when people feel like you are truly authentic with them, that you see them as who they are, that you value them as themselves, then the alignment that comes into that for people who they don't just buy into your vision, but they start to take ownership of it, which is really exciting because that's when the team can grow really fast and really, really strong.
I'm a fan of that. One of our clients does something where he has a fairly large apartment complex company. They own apartment complexes all over Collin County, and he and his wife have this tradition of inviting an employee to lunch, but you're not allowed to talk about business, and the only thing you can talk about is personal. And when I heard this, I was like, that's actually brilliant. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you can get to know people from a personal perspective as well, it's not about getting all up in their business, right? But we have become such a digitalized world and a siloed world that we focus so much on what we're doing, we forget about the people that are around us. But it's the people that makes the work enriching.
Right.
It's the people that makes the work interesting, and our work should be to change the world.
Yes. And I think your message is probably more important than ever because as millennials become the most common worker, millennials will jump ship if the company's culture is not right.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think creating your company has a culture, whether you intend the culture that you have or not.
Right.
And so it's really important that as you're going into it, that you're building the type of culture that will attract not only the employees, but attract the clients and the vendors that you want to surround yourself with.
I know some boomer bosses think that by putting a ping pong table in the break room that that is their answer to improving culture.
Yeah,
but
that's enough, right?
Yeah, right.
No.
So when companies engage you and some of your coaches, what's that like?
Yeah, well, so I've got let me just give you an example because it's easier if you have one company to work with. So one of my clients, they started in New York City. It's called Convene. They are a hospitality kind of meeting room place, kind of in between a co-working and a hotel. Super cool place. And when I started with them 4 years ago, they had 2 locations in Central Park and over Financial District. And now they have 18 locations throughout the U.S. They're about to go into Europe. They're going to double this next year and then double again the next year. It was started by 2 millennials. The average age of the general manager in the C-suite that I coach is 26. And they just got into the Forbes top 50 places to work in New York because of their culture. And what we really focused on, what these 2 kids wanted was a place that they could teach their leaders how to be coaches, which in their mind meant that their leaders knew how to ask questions versus telling people what to do.
Wow, that's powerful.
And it's so huge. Can you imagine at 26 knowing how to really lead people that way?
Yes.
It's really exciting.
Do you think that not enough bosses understand that being a mentor is maybe more important than get back to work or, do what I say?
Yeah, I work a lot with my executive clients when I do one-on-one work. The first thing that we do is I say, okay, I want you to identify 2 to 3 people because you're going to Zoom in your growth and you need to have people that you teach this to so that they Zoom with you. And one of the things that I think is really important is being able to recognize how much time, the cliche, right? How much time are you spending on the business versus in the business? And part of that being on the business is working with your people, developing the people, having that. It's the X in Apex is for extraordinary leadership, which is I've turned around now, and it's not just about my growth, but it's about how do I help develop others.
And so what do you do if an employee, you feel like the employee is just not, is kind of phoning it in or mailing it in, or maybe even taking advantage of their situation? What do you do with that employee?
Yeah, one of the things that I think is really important is very clear expectations.
Mm-hmm.
I like to come from a loving perspective, but love doesn't mean I let you do what you want to do. Love is I give you the clear expectations of what's needed in this. And I tell my clients all the time, I started this when I was working with a Fortune 500 company, you can't be the performance police. And one of the ways to do that is you tell them what your expectations are. They tell you what their expectations are. And then they come to you, whether it's weekly, biweekly, monthly, and they tell you how they're doing towards their goals. So it's instead of you shaking your finger and saying, you're not doing this, you're not doing that, it's them coming to you saying, look, this is where I'm doing really well. This is where I need some help. This is where I'm just kind of in a meh mood.
When you come into a company, is there like a most common problem? I mean, if a company is having a problem, do you typically find it's usually this problem?
Communication. By far. There was a Stanford study, and I do a lot of work with conversational intelligence, who also uses that study that said that 9 out of 10 conversations miss the mark. I think I'm telling you what you want to hear or you need to hear, but you're hearing something through your filters. I'm telling you something through my filters, and if our filters don't line up, then you've totally missed what I wanted to say.
Right. And so let's going back to emotional intelligence. How does that play a role in breaking down those communication barriers?
Yeah, I think what's really important there is that from an emotional intelligence perspective, you know the two that skills, there's 15 skills, right? The 2 skills that most people think about are self-awareness and empathy. So the self-awareness is really huge. And you had talked earlier about blind spots, and I call myself the blind spot indicator.
Love it.
Because it's very easy for people to see blind spots in others and not in themselves. But beyond being self-aware, you need to be able, as a leader, to help other people be self-aware as well. So if I can understand what's going on with you or get down deeper into what's going on, then we can together make the situation better, whatever it is.
Right. Are there companies that you admire, ones that most listeners would know?
Well, I think Google does a really cool job of really wanting to dig deep and figure out what's going on with their people. There's, with all companies, there are things that they do that aren't so cool, but they have a great desire, I think, to make sure that the people that work for them are really invested in what they're doing.
We had an earlier guest that was talking about women in the workplace and
Yes.
female leaders. Are female leaders better at emotional intelligence than men?
Well, you would think so, right? And I think that women leaders have been given more emotional intelligence skills from the time we're growing up. However, when they go into the workforce, many times they feel as if they have to play in the corporate world by the corporate rules, which were created by men.
Got it.
And so some of their emotional intelligence strengths aren't played out as much until they start to realize that is a strength. That is what sets us apart. That is what enables us to make this team, men and women, successful.
Wow. Who are some female leaders you admire?
Sheryl Sandberg, of course, comes to mind. I just saw her at the Texas Women's Conference. And I think one of the things that's really cool about her is that she has this capability of speaking to you in a way that's very authentic, but also truthful. I just finished reading a book called Radical Candor by Kim Scott. And one of the things that Kim talks about in that book is that she was in a meeting with Tim Cook and Sheryl Sandberg. And Sheryl came out of the meeting and said, the way you speak with all of the ums that you're saying could make people feel like you're stupid. So I want to send you to class to take the ums out. And immediately Kim thought, oh my God, you think I'm stupid? She goes, no, I think other people could interpret that. So I want to help you overcome that because what you're saying is brilliant.
Wow. That's awesome. What kind of companies do you like to work with? Are they small, mid-size, large?
I work with all sizes, but so I have to be careful with my clients. But I think my favorite are the fast-growing small to mid-size companies because they're on this huge roller coaster of fun and excitement, and they've created what they wanted when they were small and they knew everybody. And now all of a sudden, like my client Convene, they're all over the U.S. and creating that culture or replicating the culture in locations outside of New York is really important to them.
Wow.
So I love that fast-growing.
And do you find that most people don't like change, but are millennials more adaptive than any other generation? Just because technology is changing every 6 months, your phone is outdated, and so they're always adapting to new technology. I mean, do you find that this generation is more accepting of change and growth?
Yes, I think they're very adaptable. I think. Honestly, though, I think it's not change that people are afraid of. It's not being prepared for change. And one of the things that I think the millennial generation has done so well is that they pull out their phones and look at YouTube and see, oh, well, this is how I do it. Right? So they have tools to enable them to change faster.
There's an app for that, isn't there?
Yes.
Well, any parting thoughts?
Well, I've loved being on this show. I wrote a book a while ago on coloring outside the lines. It's about emotional intelligence and how do you increase it. And I'm a real neuroscience geek, and so it's got you color on the right side of the page, which actually gets you into a deeper meditative state, and then you answer the questions on the left. And it gets you into more of your subconscious of how do I increase emotional intelligence.
That's really cool.
It is.
That's really cool. Give us your website.
It's apexmastery.com.
apexmastery.com. Sandi Mitchell, thank you so much. We'll have to have you back.
Thank you.
When we come back, what stories are you telling yourself that's holding you back? We'll talk to a couple of coaches who are going to help you change the narrative. That's next on The Jeff Crilley Show.
More of The Jeff Crilley Show coming up.